And Sun Moon Lake, which is kind of a prominent feature of our film, dried up in the worst drought they've seen in 57 years.
Oh my gosh.
And Taiwan is on fire.
Oh my gosh.
They are bringing in helicopters from New Zealand just trying to put out fires in the middle of where we are trying to film. And I'm like, could this be any more intense?
Welcome to The Practical Filmmaker, an educational podcast brought to you by the Filmmaker Institute and Sunscreen Film Festival, where industry professionals talk nuts and bolts and the steps they took to find their success today. On today's show, Sydney Tooley is smack in the middle of production for her first big feature, telling us how she got the gig and how it's going. Find the full transcripts and more at thepracticalfilmmaker.com. I'm your host, Tanya Musgrave, and today is part one of a series following first-time feature director Sydney Tooley, who is presently in the throes of production for her faith-based narrative feature for Sony's Affirm films, Sun Moon. Okay, so set the stage for us. Where and when did this project start? How did you get into this?
So I lived in Taiwan between 2016 and 2017. I finished film school and was like, what am I doing with my life?
As we all have.
Yes, and I got offered a job to teach English, and my parents were moving, and they were like, you want to come? And I was like, yeah, because what else do you do? And I was like, I'm going to change careers. I'm going to go be a missionary. That's what I want to do. So I went out, and I found myself teaching film for English.
That's awesome.
So, because they didn't give me a curriculum, so I was teaching, I'd read the literature and then watch the movies, and then how are movies made? And I realized throughout the year that I'm teaching film classes, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm not over it. And then at the end of the year, I just felt really strongly called to go back to Nashville. Not even to Nashville, just to America and make movies. I was like, okay, I'm going to go. So I came back here, no money, no job, no car, no prospects, nothing. I worked on a little feature in Chattanooga. And then I got called by a recruiter from Lipscomb University. And they were like, we've seen your stuff, we want you to come. And I'm like, how do they even know who I am?
Yeah.
Apparently my mom had made a call, but I didn't know that. Because I was not going to go to grad school.
Good old mom.
Mom, yeah. And so I ended up, a week before school started, they were like, we want you, we are going to accept you, here's money off your bill, blah, blah, blah. And I moved with a borrowed car to Nashville. And now I live here. So that was 3 years ago. But in 2019... I was talking to my professor, who's now currently my producer, and we were talking about Taiwan and just relaying stories, and he was like, why don't you go write some of this down? And I was like, okay. So I went and just wrote a bunch of stories down in like a 46-page draft with no structure, and was like, here's kind of all of these stories. And he was like, well, why don't you go and actually like find a structure to this? So I started writing Sun Moon, which was based heavily on my own experiences as a teacher, and then it has grown, and in the last 2 years just grown into this whole story. And now we're here. We're about to leave for Taiwan like in a couple of days.
Oh my gosh. So, all right. So you're in the middle of production. You've already shot 6 days. Yes? 6 days here in Nashville. You've had a few local locations. And then now you're about ready to go international for the bulk of?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So are you a current grad student then here at Lipscomb, or is this a Lipscomb project, or is this yours?
I'm graduated with the script finished, and then we had started pitching it, and so when it came down to Sony, that was kind of a crazy turn of events because the guy at Sony never gives money. Like, the person funding does not do it. So I was like, well,
how did you find this person first?
We have ties with Sony, I guess, a little bit. So Rich Peluso kind of comes and talks to our school a lot, and like he had said something to Steve Taylor about, you know, they are taking over Pureflix and they're going to rename it, and it's going to be this new streaming platform. They want to put movies on it, and so they were. And
Steve Taylor is your professor.
Yes, and now my producer.
Okay, and he has done Blue Like Jazz. Okay, all right. So catching everybody up.
Yep, sorry.
Continue. No, continue.
Yes, Steve was like, yeah, they're looking for movies, and I don't think it's gonna be a big deal, but you know, we'll pitch it. And I was like, okay, cool, it's good practice, you know. So he went and he pitched it, and the meeting went surprisingly well. And I wasn't in any of these meetings because he was like, I'm just gonna go pitch it and we'll see what happens because I'm gonna produce. And I was like, cool. So he went off and he came back and he was like, well, that meeting went good. And I was like, okay, cool. Then it started getting serious. It picked up really fast. I mean, this whole thing probably took off within 2 months. I mean,
Oh, my word.
Yeah, so we got the green light, like, at the very beginning of June, maybe tail end of May, we got, like, this is a thing.
And, like, and you knew the amounts and everything from there, or?
We had pitched it at a $900,000 budget.
Okay.
And originally, I was trying to make this thing for like 150, which thank the Lord we did not do that, because that would have been bad. But we pitched it to them, and they liked it. And, you know, Steve was like, I have this script. It has a female protagonist. It has a female director who's kind of new, but like, and there's this whole story, and they really liked it. And so ultimately, like, it ended up being, I became attached as director kind of through default, because he was like, this is her movie and she's going to be attached to it. But, like, I didn't even meet the producers until we were at the final table read for this project. And then he was there for the final project, like the final table read, and I was like, oh my gosh. I've never even, I know who he is, but I'd never met him. Yeah. And now we're sitting there in this table read, and I'm like, I'm like, okay. And I'm just, you know, I'm like, yes, I'm the attached director, hello. And everybody, and it's funny because a lot of people are like, oh, you're the director. I'm like, yes, I know, I look like I'm 20. I know. I mean, it's fine. So, and, you know, it's scary because you get through it and you're like, do they still like it? Like, I don't know. And then we get into final questions at the end, and he's like, so this is one for the director, and turns to me, and I'm like, okay. You know, and I hadn't described a lot of these scenes out. Like, the way I write is pretty, like, here is what's in the scene, and you get the feel of the scene. You read a scene, you're like, here it is, okay. And so he's like, so if you're going to do this, this, and this, and I'm like, I'm just going to answer this and just go for it because I have to direct this movie. And so I just told him, like, here's what I'm going to do, boom, boom, boom. And he's like, okay, good. And I was like, okay, good.
Okay, good.
Cool. That was good. All right. So we've had Rich on set one of the days, and he's just a beautiful human. Yeah. And I love him. And he's just so, you know, so nurturing when he gets on there, because, you know, it's scary because he's the money guy and he's standing there. Yeah. Like, yeah. But, you know, he also, like, took the time to pull me aside and be like, how are you doing? You're doing a good job. Like, are you having fun with this? Like, you know, just really, like, and I was like, oh, Reggie's
That's amazing. And that's a great relationship to have with a producer, too. Like, somebody who knows that you're a first-time feature director and is willing to still take that chance. And, you know, I mean, I think that's awesome. Is there any particular aspect that you didn't know you needed that ended up being a bit of, like, a linchpin to get that deal? Do you know, was it an accountant, a lawyer, or, you know, something along the lines? I know that you said you weren't part of those meetings, but peripherally, did you hear anything that was just like, oh, it was a really good thing that we had this, or this, or this, or, you know, what have you?
What really helped in the pitches was Steve Taylor's just, first of all, fantastic and the eternal optimist. And when he pitches, you're like, yeah.
We can totally
we're doing it. And it can be an impossible project. You know, like, in the back of your mind, you're like, I don't think so. Because, you know, when you really look at, like, the scope of this project, it's like, okay, it's COVID right now. The amount of just stakes with this one particularly, because we got greenlit, and then it was like, and now there's a COVID spike in Taiwan, and now they have the Delta strand, and it's in the north and the south, and Sun Moon Lake, which is kind of a prominent feature of our film, dried up in the worst drought they've seen in 57 years.
Oh my gosh.
And Taiwan is on fire.
Oh my gosh.
They're bringing in helicopters from New Zealand, just trying to put out fires in the middle of where we are trying to film. And I'm like, could this be any more intense?
Well, boy, I can't wait for the follow-up. This is gonna be awesome.
And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, what helped a lot with the pitch was I had done a lot of pre-work in Taiwan myself, so I had already talked to locations. I already talked to the places we're staying. I knew where we're going. Here's the pictures. Here's the places and people and everything that we need to make this a reality.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped that my information was accurate, because when Steve went into pitch, it was like, you know, it backed up everything that I was saying.
Yeah.
And then even when we have our production company in Taiwan, even what they're saying is what I'm saying. So now we have all of these like, oh yeah, this is possible.
Okay.
And I think it was really helpful to have done all of that like pre-work and research, so that when Steve went in to pitch, it wasn't like, this is crazy.
Yeah. You have something to back it up.
Yeah.
So you are going to have a Taiwanese crew. How many of your crew presently are going over there?
Our crew that is going over is made up of recent undergraduates, actually. They're recent undergrad students, and I think we have 2 that are still in school currently, because I'm, a new director, and I love bringing in students that I'm like, there's talent there, but you might not get a shot, and I've been given a shot, and so now I'm going to bring you with me, and we're going to, figure it all out together, which is cool. So it is a young crew, which is like really cool, but also like terrifying, because you're like, oh boy. But we have 14 of us going over, including actors, I believe.
Okay.
So we've been working with Stone Soup Productions over in Taiwan. They're up in Taipei. They've been great. And they really help back up all of that info. Like, oh, look, it is this easy to shoot here. Once you're here, it is, and here's what's happening with COVID, and here's what's happening with how you would get production teams. And it is cheaper to film in Taiwan, which is great. And we're bringing in money to the country, which is nice. And we're able to hire out and from there, which is really awesome.
How big is your Taiwan crew going to be? And, we'll start there. How big is your Taiwan crew?
Our Taiwan crew will probably be, I'm guessing 15.
Okay.
So we should have a total of 30.
Okay, all right.
Just because, again, like with COVID right now, it's just like the large scale groups and everything.
Tell me how that's gonna work. All right, walk me through what the COVID protocol is, because you have to quarantine, right?
Yes. So that was also maybe why we chose students too, because students are like, yes, I will go and sit in a room for 2 weeks. And like,
this is fun.
Yeah, like, oh look, Netflix for 2 weeks, that's great. I don't have to leave this room. Food is delivered to me. Wow. Like, now I the COVID quarantine in Taiwan is great. We have 2 weeks of quarantine, and then we also have a week of self-monitoring where we cannot actually go in and interact with the populace. So it's like, it's almost 3 weeks of down before we have 3 weeks of production. So we're over there for 6 weeks.
Okay.
The whole shoot is a 4-week production. Like.
Okay. Yeah.
It's probably.
Because of this week here. You're
right,
saying.
because of this week. So if you were to, like, on a normal scale, you're probably looking at like 20 days of shooting.
Yeah.
But because of the COVID protocols, we're there for 3 weeks before we can even pop off a shot. Which.
Okay, wait. So there's 2 weeks you're in your room.
Yeah.
And then there's 1 week that you can't interact with the populace, but are you able to go to the location?
Yeah.
Because the location is a school, right?
Yeah,
and it's kind of like an already like locked down kind of institution, so you're going to be there.
Right. And so that was kind of where, we can't bring in kid actors, but if we have our 2 mains, if they're coming with us from America, there's a couple of scenes where it's just them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah, we could go in and we can shoot some of their dialogue, talking scenes that are great, where we're just walking around on the campus, or some of the scooter scenes where they're driving around, or like just little, we can pick stuff up that, because there's montages,
something.
Man. I just... Like, you think, like, yeah, we'll make it a montage. I'm like, I hate montages. We're like, what costume change is this? And is it another one? And then there's a 20-minute change over here. And you're like,
yeah,
you don't even think about it, because you're like, you skip the whole, like, oh, yeah, there's a new hair and makeup, too, which is a different look. So we've really tried with this to be very mindful of, like, what is she wearing? And can she add a jacket to this shirt? And is she going to add a scarf to this shirt? And we see this outfit multiple times, like, and when, and what hair is she doing? And can we do, like, a ponytail or a down? And that's it. Yeah. Like, the look doesn't change, because it's just, like, first of all, you're going to Taiwan and it's hot, so, like... Nobody looks good when they're out there. It's a rough life. You get out there and you're like, I'm dying. It's been written and like prepped for that kind of environment, because we're going in the heat of summer too, which is like extremely hot, very humid.
So you're going to be on that college campus. Fun fact. Did you know that my parents taught at that school.
Did you tell me this?
Yeah, I had, well, like, I was only there, obviously, at, like, the first year of my life, so I don't remember a ton of it. But, yeah, my parents, they were over there for 6 years, taught there.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Brought me back as a souvenir. So,
Aww.
fun fact for everybody. In any case, I'm not sure what you can and can't talk about, but
Sure.
but we do know that the budget for this is $1.2 million. So this includes distribution and marketing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So it's fully funded. Do you plan on doing a festival run?
Well, I think that at the beginning, I didn't want to lose the movie into a streaming platform, you know? Like, it's a new streaming platform, and that's awesome to have distro, but without having any kind of a festival run, it's kind of scary because it's like everything right now, because of COVID, is going into streaming, and so in my mind, I'm like, how is anybody going to see it unless it's really promoted?
Mm-hmm.
I want the festival run because, you know, that's where you get recognized. It's like, oh, look, here's somebody up and coming. And you don't know, like, if you could, I'm like, I can get my movie into Sundance. It's going to Sundance. I think it's going to Sundance. But, like, you know, even that kind of, like, even an official selection from something that high is like, oh, they did something that was good enough to be recognized even on an official selection level, which I think is like really important. And then also, like, you start thinking about, okay, so what about me now? Which is, I hate that, but because I just want to make stuff, but like I can't make more things unless I'm known. So now this is kind of a promotional, like, I love the movie, everybody wants to love the movie, but now I want to make the second one and the third one, and how do I get seen and known and funding for all of those?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm hoping that will do for us.
Yeah.
And then I do really want a limited release in Taiwan because this is a love letter to Taiwan. The film is written so that Americans do not have subtitles for the Chinese unless we are learning the words with her. So the whole thing, when you walk into that classroom the first time and everybody's talking Chinese, like, and kids say stuff and she's like, what? We're also going to be like, what? Because we don't know what they're saying.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to indicate that. And I think that's really cool. So as she grows and, like, becomes more familiar with the language, that we start learning a little bit more. But, like, really, it is meant for that kind of audience to be able to watch it and understand on that level. And so I think that's a really fun concept. I haven't really seen it done too much other than, like, I think the most recent one, Sound of Metal, did it with
Okay, yeah.
him learning how to speak sign language. And we kind of are, it's similar to that.
Gotcha. I feel like this type of film would be eaten up by the Taiwanese culture, honestly.
We're trying. I was like, look, it'll be so cute. Like, she's going to fall in love with him. And it's like, there's like a little love story in there. Oh, it's so cute.
That's awesome. So, all right. What was the biggest budgetary surprise for you?
How much I got paid? No. Budget-wise,
that could be a surprise too.
That one was surprising. Yeah. I actually got paid to direct, like, and I got paid for the screenplay.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. Yeah, that was a little crazy.
That's awesome.
Because I like literally went in with like, I don't care if I make any money, I'll starve to death.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what a lot of people are willing to do, especially for their first feature.
Yeah.
So yeah, the fact that you get paid is a big deal.
It's kind of
Yeah, and for your screenplay, which is another big deal.
I know. You like, it's crazy because you now have a writer and a directing cred, which is like, and it's an original screenplay too.
Yeah.
And I do have a co-writer who had come in later to help with structure.
Yeah. I think I had overheard that. That they're just like, oh, we'll pair her up with somebody who's like a little bit more experienced and can help button it up and that kind of thing. How was that process? Do you feel like it was still like you were still able to keep a lot of your original vision and like that kind of thing? Or
yeah, it was really interesting working with a co-writer because at first you're like, I'm such a baby at this, but as we started writing together, a lot of the changes she made structurally were like, yeah, we totally need this, and now it's way more cinematic, and and then there's points where I'm like, no, we're not going to do that because that's kind of going off, like the character wouldn't talk like this or whatever, and you'll go back.
What was the change that made it more cinematic to you?
I think really just structurally it's been tightened up a lot, and then we have heightened a couple of things in there, like we've added some exciting elements, like there's an earthquake, or like there was a point where, especially with that romance, where people are like, oh, but we really want to see it go like all the way to here, and that was like my one big point where I was like, no, Like, rein it in. This isn't about them. And also, like, culturally, that's not correct. And we cannot do that.
Oh, that's good. And that's good feedback for them to know, too, because if you have American writers for something that is, culturally Taiwan,
Yeah. I was very specific about, like, where can we push the boundaries culturally. And she was so great. I was working with Susan Isaacs, and she was so great to work with because we'd get in the writer's room, and be, like, really collaborative, where I'd be like, oh, yeah, I really like this idea, and I really like this scene, but this one's not working so well. And then she'd be like, well, what if we do this? And so it was a very, like, you come out of it being like, wow, we did this thing together. And it was, like, a super cool process. And every time we do it, it was like a master class on, like, oh, wow, if I wrote like this, okay.
Yeah. What did you spend money on that you wished that you had spent somewhere else? You're halfway through production now, so you can kind of gauge, like, oh, man, if we just had this, if we had more of this, or if we just put a little bit more towards that, things would be smoother, or like, oh, this would have served the story so much better. Have you been able to see anything, even if you're in the middle of the fray, I understand, but from your perspective right now, has there been money that you would wish that you had spent elsewhere?
At this point, no, surprisingly. Okay. Like, I've been extremely happy with how it's gone. At one point I was like, how are we going to make this set? Because we built a Taiwanese apartment set, and it is replicated here at the school. And when we started building it, I was like, I don't know how this is going to look, and the fact that it came to life at all, I think, like, realistically, like, it's the tiniest thing, but I wish we'd had more tiles for that bathroom, and that's it, and we weren't even in that set that much, so, so it's funny because it's literally, like, I mean, catering, Crafty's been great. Everything that we've wanted to accomplish, we've accomplished. If I said, like, let's build a set over here, and we built it, and we're able to stay within the budget, like, so far, I might be, like, when we get back from Taiwan, I might be like, well, actually, this. But
yeah, I'm keeping this. I'm keeping these questions so I can.
Yeah, you come back and be like, are you still living? Yeah, but so far, like, we've gotten all the locations we wanted. There was at one point the opening scene is her in this bathtub, and there was a point where we were like, I don't even know if we should spend money on this location, and it was like the one place I was like, this is the opening scene. We cannot afford to try and find something cheaper. Like, it's our first visual, like, and Steve made it happen.
Yeah.
I don't spend money needlessly.
Yeah.
And so when I say, like, this is important, he's like, okay, let's find a way to do it.
So I just wrapped up producing a feature as well, on a much smaller scale. But that was one thing that was really helpful for me, from the director, who was saying, okay, ask me to rate whatever the importance is. So, is this a 7 out of 10 or is this a 5 out of 10? Like, and I would go after the 7 out of 10s.
Yeah.
The 5 out of 10s I would still try, but, I wouldn't, like, lose sleep over it. So that, I'm sure that helped him too. If you suddenly had triple your budget and you could pivot quickly, where would you put your money first?
Elongating shoot days. We shot 6 days this last week, and you're cramming the first day literally was 10 pages we shot.
Oh my stars, what?
Yeah, we shot 10 pages the first day. We did go into overtime, but that is the only day we've gone on overtime at all. And we've had a lot of, like, when I look at it, I'm like, there's a lot of challenges this week. We have this networking company that's working with us to get the word out on it. We've got gallery shoots with actresses, which takes them out for half a day, or, like, so we'll have to wrap super early. And I'm like, and there are days where I had no idea that we had to wrap early.
Yeah. And you have, like, half of your day.
Right. Yeah. And so then you're like, well, shoot, I've got to get all 5 pages done in half a day, and we have to wrap this person out because we're going to go on overtime. And, like, she's been in gallery shoots, like, and not. And so that was a huge, like, and then you're getting pulled out. Like, I got pulled out to do an interview on one of the bigger days where we're going over to shoot that grocery store, and, like, right before the grocery store scene, they're like, we have to do an interview. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. I'm like, and you're hyper focused in at this time. So when they're like, come and do this, and you're like, oh my gosh, now I'm out of zone. But, like, we also appreciate it so much because you need the press.
You need it.
But, you're getting, people will get pulled out, and then actors will get pulled out, and you're like, where is this person? And they're like, in an interview, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I only have 6 days, okay, the press. And again, we love them, publicity's great.
Yeah.
But good Lord, like, we're in the middle of shooting, like, you know, anywhere between, like, 10 pages the first day and then 5 to 7 we're averaging. And company moves and, like, that first day.
How many company moves?
Oh my gosh. A lot. Literally, the AD was like, why are we doing this? And I'm like, I'm sorry. I know. Yeah, no. The first day we had a company move. So we shot at BNA Airport the first day, which on the first, just the morning portion. Then we company moved. Yeah, we built this hospice facility out of a dorm room. So we moved into this hospice facility for, like, the final scene. So we shot, like, the most emotionally charged scenes of the entire movie the first day at 10 pages. And just like,
of course. Oh my god.
That was a really rough way to start.
Yeah.
The 2 days we were in the set were really nice because you're just here, but like it's still a lot of like fast pace. And if I could elongate the time, like give me like a week and a half in Nashville instead of just 6 days or like somewhere in there, that would be where I'd put all my money.
Nice. What do you feel was your best spent money?
Well, right now, I'd say the best spent that we've done is the set. Our locations, for sure. Like, our set, building the set here saved us so much time over there.
Yeah.
And we had wild walls on it, so we could move in and out pretty fluidly, which is so nice. Because those apartments over there are, like, minutia. They're so claustrophobic and small and like it. And I was like, I don't know how we're going to get those done. But the other one, again, like that bathroom set, like, I know it was expensive, but that opening shot is so stunning that I'm like, yeah, money well spent. Take it out of my budget. I'll give it to you. I'll pay for the location.
Yeah. So, okay, can you talk about amounts that were spent? Like, for instance, you said B&A. Like, how did you get that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how much. I know how much we spent on certain sets. I don't know how much I can like say numerically that we've spent. B&A was one of those where I was like, I had written it like we could fake it because who shoots in the airport at $1 million? You're crazy. Like, and I don't know how much we spent on the airport, but I know that we got it and we had a gate and I got to go down a gangway and like it was crazy.
Yeah.
I know how much we spent on the building of this set. I think we spent like maybe $5,000 building the set, which is
like
nothing.
Pennies in your budget.
Like, right. So I mean, numerically, where money is going, I don't have a
like
budget.
A percentage of just like talent and crew.
Yeah,
and
talent. We did spend a lot on talent because you know, casting is 90% of the movie. I mean, it's so vital we have the right cast, especially for this one, because literally like our main character is in every shot. I mean, she is in every single scene of this movie. It's there are no scenes without her. And it was like, we have to find somebody that we love because you have to watch her and love her and follow her for an hour and a half. That was such a challenge because you don't even think about it until you start doing it. I love casting, but then you start casting your first one and you're like, if I choose wrong, oh gosh. We have a fantastic cast. Mackenzie Mozzie is our main, and she's just phenomenal. I mean, she just brings it every time. We had one night where we were like, we were going to have to pull call, and that wasn't an option, and I was like, all right, we're going to do this in one take. And she just brings it every time. And it just, I love watching it. I'm like, wow, she's so good.
Is she out of Nashville?
She is out of Atlanta.
Okay.
Madison McLaughlin is our sister character, who's kind of, she just like at the beginning of the movie like steals your heart and then she breaks it by the end, and you're like, she's so good too. Like the two of them were just, I mean, so fire. Like you just want to watch them and all day. Yeah.
What is the biggest budget that you've worked with before?
Gosh, $6,000.
Because the first time they're like, oh, 600.
No, 6,000.
6,000.
It was my final capstone project from undergrad.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a $12,000 budget. It was $6,000.
Yeah.
But it's great. Like the last movie I made was a year ago, and it was a sci-fi. It was 5 minutes, and it was a $500 budget. So I'm working these mini budgets, like, you know, the challenge is fun. Like, how much can you do with no money? This budget to me is massive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want this to happen. And they're like, done. And I'm like, oh, I didn't have to fight for that one at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's really nice to have the money, but it does take a little bit of the control away, because now there's stake in it, right? Because you have the producer who's like, okay, we have to get a movie right. And so now there's a little bit more pressure, because even though it's a lower budget in the grand scheme of things, you still have a budget that to somebody is substantial money. And now you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do it. But there is a level of pressure to be like, ooh, this is going to, like, there's like actual producers standing over you on set. I mean, there was one day we had 3 of them just standing there, and I'm like, ah! And I'm like, okay. And we were behind that day. That was fun.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I will say this, sometimes the best thing that you can do for your director is to just leave. Leave the set.
Yes. Sometimes, yeah, there was one day where I was like, this is a lot of people. I can't see them, though. So sometimes I'll, like, if they're in the video village, because sometimes they'll populate video village, right?
Yeah,
and I'll sneak away, and I'll pick the camera that I'm most... Because we're shooting 3 cameras a lot, which is... That's a whole other challenge in itself, because normally you'd shoot with 1. I love shooting 2 and 3 cameras, because I'm like, oh, I got all the coverage, and, like, do shots. Woo!
Yeah.
We're done.
Yeah.
But lighting for that and challenges of that are its own thing.
Okay.
But sometimes I'll, like, sneak away from Video Village and, like, be on set behind whichever camera I feel is the most important at that moment to capture. And so that's kind of nice, because then you're in it with them. And we've done a lot of car scenes, so I always get in the car with the cam up, and I'm like, okay, we're going to shoot it. Let's go.
Yeah, you're definitely in there with the action and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, it still doesn't feel real, even though we've finished 6 days. I'm just like, man,
Which feels like a lifetime, honestly,
gosh,
on set sometimes.
I got to the end of the week, and I was like, and it's over. And I'm like, no, it's not over.
It's not.
It's not done yet. Okay.
Dude, you're just getting started. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm ready, though. We're going to go over and, like, I get a real long break in there where I get to do all my prep work, and I'm like, I'm ready.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of Zoom calls, even though you guys are in
like,
it's like one room removed, but it'll be good. So we are going to revisit you then after production, and then probably again, like, you know, post into distribution. I'm really curious about the whole distribution process.
What's that
So, like,
what is that?
I'm really excited to follow you throughout that journey. I think that's going to be awesome. So international travel is on. Crazy schedule with quarantine is on. Somebody had asked you kind of like what it was like kind of being the first female director in the faith-based space. So
that was crazy, because I hadn't thought about it. Is it me? Oh no.
Well, you're definitely one of the first. Maybe, I don't know, maybe some people have to do some sleuthing, but if nothing comes up, I mean...
Somebody sleuth that out and make sure I'm not the first, because that's a lot of pressure.
No. It is not a lot of pressure. You're just going to do your thing, and you're going to be great at it. It's going to be awesome. How do people find you or follow your work on this?
Ooh, most people find me on Instagram and just follow me through there, because I do a lot of just updates through Instagram, just
like
because,
through your stories and
through my stories and stuff. And then you can also, I do have a website, and I do try to keep like projects and then current projects that I'm working on.
Is there one for this film?
There is one. There's an Instagram for this film, so give it some love. It's at SunMoonFilm 2021.
Okay.
Also hashtag SunMoonFilm 2021.
Okay.
So there's that. I think its website's being built currently, and we are also on IMDb, so that's exciting.
That is exciting.
And then myself, I'm on Instagram, Sydney Tooley, or like SYD2LY is my handle. You can find me. I'm always posting like, oh look, we're making this movie today. Blah, blah. And then also my website is sidtooley.com, so it's SYD2LY.com.
Nice. Yes. Well, I can't wait to catch up with you after all of this, see what your thoughts are and all that stuff. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us now.
Happy to.
If you enjoyed this interview, follow us right here and on Instagram, and check out more episodes at thepracticalfilmmaker.com. Be well and God bless. We'll see you next time on The Practical Filmmaker.